Hi everyone, and actually started exactly at 8 o'clock. Like normally my streams get delayed by a good 15-20 minutes. But this time we actually managed to start on time. The annual or the weekly worship for the NHS isn't quite going on just yet. But I apologize if you end up hearing any banging in the background. So this is a different kind of episode of The Rose Pill. Now, a lot of you who watch this channel know that generally the Rose Pill is when I kind of talk to various guests on, normally about 3 or 4 people, but I just have one person on today who is but let me just introduce him. So this is Mo. Mo, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, okay. So, hello. I'm Mo. I'm from New Zealand. I'm 18 and I'm non-binary.
So the reason why Mo is on my channel is they've been doing the rounds of like a couple of different YouTubers recently. Basically, my friend Mars introduced me to them. Now, I did a video a couple of months ago, a video which I was really, really proud of, by the way, which is called like Non-Binary is Meaningless. And Mo, being a non-binary person, did have some feelings on the video, and I watched their response. There were things that I agreed with, there were things that I didn't agree with, but there were a couple of points in there that were actually really worth having a discussion over, and that's kind of what the aim of this video is. This isn't a gotcha, this isn't like internet blood sports, it's not going to be like Vosh, where you just get someone on and then just absolutely slate them the second that they disappear. Mo is actually really cool, so I thought we would have a little bit of a discussion about this. So, Mo, you are non-binary.
Yeah.
Why don't you start off by putting forward your definition of non-binary?
I guess just someone who doesn't identify as either male or female.
It's just as simple as that.
Form. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, is there any particular meaning to that, or is there any kind of rigid definition of that, or is it open to interpretation?
Well, I guess it's open to interpretation in the same way that being a binary trans person is open to interpretation. Right. So, like, different people have different definitions for, being trans, but I don't know whether you'd call that, yeah.
Right. Okay. Why don't you tell my audience a little bit about kind of your background, how you came out as being non-binary?
Yeah. So when I was kind of growing up, just like the small child, my family didn't really care about gender roles, so I kind of did whatever I wanted. And then when I hit puberty, I think it's the classic thing of, oh, wow, my body is changing and this is not what I thought was going to happen. And so I got really uncomfortable, quite dysphoric, but obviously back then I didn't know that. And so I kind of struggled for ages, and when I was 16, or maybe a bit earlier than that, I kind of properly discovered what being transgender was, just like binary trans. And so I struggled with that for a bit. I started dressing really masculine. I changed my name to Mo. At this point, I didn't know whether I was trans or not, but I just did all this stuff anyway, because I was like, this makes me feel good. And everyone just thought I was a dude. Everyone thought I was a dude when I was about 16. And but that didn't really feel right either. It just felt slightly better than, being called a girl. So and then I don't know, after a while I kind of eventually came to the conclusion that I was non-binary, but it took quite a while because nothing felt right.
So when you say you came to the conclusion that you were non-binary, how did you find out about non-binary?
So I'd known about non-binary for a wee while, but I guess I hadn't really taken it seriously, because I was like, oh, I didn't really understand it that much. And there's not much representation around, so yeah.
So where did you hear about it from?
I went to a at school there was like an LGBT group, and I just come out as bisexual, and so I went to a couple of those groups, and they were talking about non-binary there, but it was just a bunch of kids talking about it, and nothing they said made much sense to me because they're all just kids, right?
So there were quite a few non-binary people there, would you say?
Not really. I think there was about 2. There was about, my school wasn't that big. I think there was maybe 3 like binary trans people, or 2 or 3, and then 2 non-binary people, and then the rest were like gay or whatever.
How big was your school?
700 maybe.
Wow. And this is high school, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's well, it's actually kind of surprising to hear that in a high school that there's actually quite a lot. Like, I know it's only like 2 or 3. It's still quite a number of people there.
Yeah. To be fair, because my school is known as kind of the accepting place where you go if you're different. I used to go to a different school, which was a single-sex school, and it was semi-private, and it was the worst experience of my life. I was like the only person who was like me, and so then I moved there, and I think that was kind of the trend. Everyone hated in another school moved there, and it was fine.
And so you mentioned that you came out as bisexual. What age were you?
14.
14. Okay.
Yeah.
So like you came out as bisexual. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of the journey. So you came out as being bisexual at the age of 14. You then started to go through puberty and you were uncomfortable with it. And so you started off in this group as being bisexual. After spending time in this LGBT group, you then came out as being a trans man. But that didn't feel particularly right. No.
I never came out as a trans man.
Okay.
It was an internal thing in my head. People who just met me for the first time thought that I was a dude.
Right. So, okay. So you were presenting in like a more masculine way, but you never actually, because you mentioned earlier about like you quite liked it when people referred to you with male pronouns.
It wasn't that I liked it. It was it was that I guess it was because I didn't feel like a girl being referred to as he. It was like, I'm not being referred to as a girl. It still didn't feel right, but I guess it was. You know what I mean?
Right. So you weren't so happy with being you didn't like it when people referred to you as a girl, but then when people would kind of read you as a guy, you didn't like that either.
No. But it felt slightly better.
Oh, you mean like was I right in saying that?
Yeah, for the most part. Okay. I think it just felt slightly better than being referred to as a girl, because at least I wasn't being seen as the gender I was born as. I guess that was kind of my mentality. I was like, it feels wrong, but it also feels slightly better than before.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm actually quite interested in this like kind of school group, because I'm not used to there being LGBT groups in schools. I mean, maybe that's me showing my age, because like there was 10 years ago, such a thing would be unheard of, like even in the UK. And I think now it is starting to kind of become a bit more of a thing. So I wouldn't mind kind of hearing a little bit more of an explanation as to what that group is like. So what kind of things did you talk about?
Well, I think because the way the group came about was quite interesting. I think it came about from a bunch of people like me moving from these schools where, you've been bullied because you're different. So and then we moved to this school, and it's really accepting and everyone's really lovely. So everyone was like, hey, why don't we kind of make a group? I think the group sort of died out a little bit eventually because people had stuff to do. But I guess people just went in there and they talked about different stuff. Lots of people had kind of different opinions on things. So it was kind of, I sort of found it a bit confusing almost.
Yeah. Well, wait, what was there, like politics discussed, or was it just purely about LGBT things? Like,
well, we did a mixture of different stuff. Sometimes we'd watch videos of people coming out, I guess, and sometimes we'd talk about our experiences. There was some there was one time people did get into kind of like the trans stuff, because there was this one trans dude, and our old principal at the time, she wasn't like wanting to really let him wear the kind of the male uniform. He did end up getting to wear the male uniform, but like it was a bit of a thing. So there was a bit of discussion about that, and people were a bit pissed off. So
right, so there was actually a case in the school of like a trans guy who just wanted to present as a male. The head wasn't really comfortable with that, and your group was able to speak with the head and kind of get the head to allow him to dress in that way.
Yeah, I mean, eventually, yeah, like the kind of principal, it was her last year anyway, so she kind of left, and then we had like a co-principals for the next thing, and they didn't really mind. So.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating. But there wasn't really any kind of political issues being discussed in this group. Like, did anyone wear their politics on their sleeves, or was it purely just related to LGBT issues?
I think it's hard to remember because this was a few years ago now. But
of course,
I think there probably was some politics, but I was like 14, 15 at the time, and I didn't really care about politics, if I'm honest. So
you didn't kind of pay attention to it.
No.
Right. Okay. So you came out as how long have you been out as being NB?
It's kind of weird. I've sort of a lot of my friends have been very aware that I've been kind of struggling with this for a while, because I like I mean, I go to a lot of kind of, I guess, quite progressive spaces, because I'm I'm into theatre and art, and they attract quite progressive people. So usually when I go into a space, people will be like, "So, what are your pronouns?"
Oh God.
That actually, when I was discovering myself, that was the most awkward question anyone could possibly ask me, because I didn't know, and I'd be like, I just did anything, right? So yeah,
I mean, like, for me, it's always kind of the opposite. It's like I'm putting out a very specific image, and people then ask, "Oh, what are your pronouns?" And like, have you ever come across the pronoun circles? I mean, you are in progressives, I hate them. Like,
that's what they did actually in that group of that I was in at school.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, wow. That's wow. And so, like, how many people were in that group again? Was it quite big?
So the first 2 times it was ran, it was reasonably big, but a lot of people in there were just allies. And then kind of from there on, all the allies left, and then eventually people kind of just started doing their own thing and had stuff to do. So like when it first started, I was like, oh cool, I have people who accept me now, so I went a lot. But then eventually I kind of school workload started getting really massive, and I didn't need that kind of
you didn't need
me,
but just kind of taking it back on the pronoun circles, so there was like 2 people in the group who were like non-binary, and you would say that the vast majority were basically like vast majority sound like they would be cis people, let's just say, and then there was like about 2 or 3 trans men and women, and then you did like the pronoun circles for like I've always had a kind of a problem with them, because as what you would refer to as a binary trans person, it's something which basically is someone looking at me and saying, I don't know how you identify, even though you put in all this time and effort and money and everything to look in a certain way. Like, I don't recognize you unless you tell me what you are, because to me, you're nothing more than a gray blob. Like, it's the way that a lot of it feels. And it's definitely a common fault with a lot of trans women. I mean, it's even something that ContraPoints agrees with.
Yeah.
Maybe she doesn't anymore, but she certainly did a couple of months ago. But so sorry. Are you going to say something?
I think I'd agree with that. I would much kind of prefer if they had it where if you wanted to say your pronouns, you were open to. So it's like we go around the circle, we say our names, and if you want to share your pronouns, you can. But if you don't, then that's fine, because obviously for the most people it's quite obvious. So if you just had it that you can share if you want to, because maybe it's not obvious, right? You're early in your transition, or you're non-binary or whatever. I think that makes a lot more sense.
Well, it kind of draws attention to it as well. I mean, even if you are, say, like in the rough stages of an early transition, it's still very much drawing attention to the fact that, like, what are you trying to do here? Like, you're already at your most awkward. It's always something that felt like you're just kind of shining a torch on it. And it's just kind of, like, for me, and certainly for a lot of other people I know, it's one of those things that it can just kind of, you know, it can, like, don't really talk about it. Like, you don't really need to announce it, because ultimately people should kind of understand what you're going for. But let's just kind of move away from that a bit. And I just want to kind of touch a bit more on kind of your coming out, just so I get a really good understanding of what your experience has been. And then I might be able to explain some of the things that were in my video, and some of the things that we agreed with and some things that we didn't. So you started, so you've been, how long did you say you have been out as non-binary?
It's kind of, I've been out to different people for different amounts of time.
Well, let's say when you first came out to yourself, like when you had that realization.
When I came out to myself, so it would be sometime last year was when I came out to myself.
Right. So would you say it's been less than a year or more than a year?
Slightly less than a year, probably.
Right.
But I'd known for quite a long time, but it was more, I couldn't admit it to myself, because you see everybody shitting on non-binary people all the time, and I was like, I don't want that. I really wanted to just be a trans guy, or just an androgynous cis woman.
Right.
Like, that was, I wanted that so much, which was why I took so long.
Right. So you did kind of hold on to the idea that you might not be non-binary. You didn't want to be non-binary because you've seen people making fun of non-binary people, would you say?
Yeah.
Did like, one of the kind of criticisms that you've seen thrown at non-binary people, was that stuff that you agreed with, and so you felt like you might be ashamed to be non-binary, or was it that you just didn't want to be someone who would attract ridicule, if that makes sense?
I think it's probably a mixture of things. I think not being someone who attracts ridicule is definitely, nobody wants that. But also, I think I definitely had a lot of internalized stuff in my brain, where I didn't see non-binary as like a real or valid thing that you could be. So obviously I do now.
Right.
But I didn't for a long time. So yeah.
Right. Okay. So you I'm assuming that you kind of come out to more and more people during your time in university?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me a little bit about your university life, the kind of circles that you're in. I mean, you mentioned that you're in lots of art ones, and so that naturally attracts progressive people.
Yeah. So I think my best mates at the moment, one of them, she's doing like music production, and she's quite, actually, probably, it's hard to know because politics are different in every country, but she's like a national supporter, which in New Zealand is the kind of the more conservative party, but she's like, she's so on board with with me, and she's like, man, when you go and get top surgery, I'm gonna come with you and I'm gonna cry. And I'm like, thanks. And then my other friend, he does like voice acting, and he hasn't, like, I haven't really talked to him about it, but he saw this video I made about being non-binary, and he just said something like, oh, you're awesome. And I was like, thanks, man. And yeah, so I got lots of friends who just kind of, I guess, say, for most part, say little things, just being like, we know, but like, we support you, kind of thing.
Right. Okay, but so you generally you have a conservative friend. You just mostly, it's just that your friendship group is just people who support you. Yeah. Okay. So tell me a bit more about your kind of personal beliefs as well. Like what? So where do you identify on the political scale?
I'm definitely a lefty. But like, right. I'm not. I'm not like I'm not far left, but definitely more left. Like and it's hard because it's different in every country, and I definitely
Well, rather than just kind of saying left wing or right wing, what about ideology? Like, are you?
Ideology.
Yeah. So, like, are you a socialist? Are you just a run of the mill progressive?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of kind of socialism and capitalism, I find that my brain sort of goes in two ways because I'm not a fan of capitalism, but then also I don't. It's hard. I can't really see anything else that's going to work. So.
Although this isn't going to be a conversation on why capitalism is better than socialism. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But so I think we got a good understanding of your background, and kind of how you came out to be non-binary. Now, let's talk about a couple of the things on your video response. Now, I forgot to put a link of it in the video, but it's probably beneficial because you should be watching the stream right now. But when this is not recorded, I will link to it because it's good to see the kind of responses. And first of all, I do want to thank Mo for not doing a video where they're just spurging out, because I've seen a lot of the critique videos that I get, and a lot of them are just incredibly angry people. So I'd like to thank Mo for being courteous, and certainly thank them for coming on the stream as well. So one of the things that I found very fascinating in your response to me, first of all, let's just quickly go over the definition of non-binary, because I think this might be helpful later. So in a video, you had a definition from Google, and that's the one which you're still running with. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's how I identify.
That's how you identify it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you mentioned in your video was that I'd mentioned 3 different definitions that people had given for non-binary, and your critique of that was that these were simply pulled off Twitter, and that Twitter doesn't really mean anything because a lot of people can just kind of put whatever they want. And like the kind of the Twitter critique is one that I do get quite a lot, but I kind of want to explain a little bit on why I kind of get those comments and why I kind of hold that up as an example. The reason for that is Twitter doesn't come out of nowhere. I am someone who has associated with the queer community for a good number of years. The examples that people had given to them, or just in general, of being non-binary are not ones that have come out of nowhere. These aren't things that just people have plucked out from their heads. These are things that are very much ran within the community. And one of the major ones, and this leads into the discussion that we're going to be having on medical v social, is the idea that you can just identify as being non-binary or as trans, because the same kind of logic applies, just by saying that you are. That is the only criteria that you need. And it's important to kind of acknowledge that these are views that people within the community hold. These are still non-binary people, and this is, to them, that is what it means. So I think that when you mentioned about the fact that you disagreed with those kinds of definitions, to me, it kind of looked like you were more disagreeing with people from within the non-binary community. What would you say to that?
I guess it's maybe not so much that I disagree with them as a kind of like a whole, or maybe it is. Maybe it's just kind of, I guess I see my transition as, well, it's going to be a medical one.
Right.
But I guess I can definitely sympathize with why you'd want to identify as non-binary, even if you aren't trans. So I guess rather than disagreeing, it's more like I kind of want to make a distinction. So it's like that, you know,
effectively you're running, right? So what you're running, you have your definition of non-binary. That's what you stick to. When you talk about non-binary, that's what you mean. Would you say that's fair?
I think, yeah, I mean, well, when I talk about non-binary, I'm talking about trans non-binary people, because I'm trans, and it would be kind of weird if I started talking about non-binary people who weren't trans, because I'd have no idea.
The thing is, both of those groups generally get grouped in together. And in fact, we see this
Yeah.
amongst the entirety of the trans spectrum, where you will have people who say that they are trans women. And I'll use trans women as an example because it's still, it's my forte. And they will simply just say, I am a trans woman. I say I am a woman. Therefore, this is a woman's body. This is a woman's beard. I'm going to go off into the women's room now. I am a woman. And it's that kind of rhetoric where as someone like me who has worked at a transition, who has done all the stops, who genuinely has dysphoria, and I see people who effectively say that, well, they say they have dysphoria, some of them, but then they present themselves completely as men to the outside world. Now, I don't know how they're able to kind of deal with themselves if they're looking in the mirror and basically getting a man's appearance, or how they would be treated in society. And so when you're talking about like you are a trans non-binary person and you can't talk for the non-binary people who simply just say they are non-binary, would you say that you're making a kind of distinction between yourself and the other people, and that you're basically focusing on your issues?
Definitely. I think,
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody wants to, if somebody identifies as a trans person or non-binary person, and they don't pass, or they don't present in a way that you typically expect, I don't mind that, because they're not harming me. I'd only have a problem with it if you present fully as a man and you're going into the women's changing rooms. But to be honest, I really don't think that's happening that much at all. I mean, in New Zealand, I've never seen that anywhere.
The fact, those kinds of things do happen. I think it's important to kind of make a clarification on what people mean, especially within the so-called true scum community. It's not saying that, people who don't necessarily pass are these ones who are a problem. But for me, and I know for many other people, some sort of effort needs to be made if you're going to be transitioning. Like for a trans woman, it is actually really, really hard to pass. You do need to generally transition young and probably have quite a few surgeries if you really, really want to kind of go completely under the radar. For the vast majority of us, it's simply unfeasible. So when we talk about kind of low effort and stuff, it isn't simply someone who doesn't pass, but they are still not really kind of putting a lot of effort into it. It's not to say that they're going to look, like 100% female, because that is simply unattainable for a lot of people. But to at least kind of be able to look at them and then understand that they are presenting as a woman, or like she is presenting as a woman, I should say. And there are different levels of that. Like there's lots of people who I've talked about in my videos who I've been accused of like kind of ridiculing them for their appearance or whatever, when I'm not really doing that. What I'm saying is that this is just someone who is actually not doing anything for their kind of transition. So they're simply not going to be read for a number of reasons. A lot of that is to do with voice.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm kind of the thing where it's like, if you identify as trans and like you're not presenting in a certain way, I don't care, because it really doesn't affect me. What I would care about is, I mean, I think the thing is, if you're going to identify as a trans woman, but you don't, I guess, to use your words, put in any effort, I don't see a problem with that. I do see a problem with getting annoyed if people misgender you, because if you're not putting in any, I don't know, if you don't look like a woman, you're not going to get gendered as a woman. It's like when people don't call me they. I mean, it hurts, but I'm not going to get offended. Like, I'm not going to get, because I know how society works.
So you see, you at least kind of have that understanding. I mean, it's like when you have like the trans women who like might have done a lot of work for everything else, but then they simply have like a real booming manly voice. Like, I know there's going to be someone in the comments, like a troll in the comments, trying to point out that like, no, your voice is awful or anything, but that's not what I'm saying. Anyway, I know, understand you're saying that you don't really kind of care about all of this, but what would you say to like the kind of people who are saying they're non-binary? So let's say, have you ever heard of someone named Travis Albanza?
No.
Okay, so Travis, let me try and pull up a picture of Travis Albanza. because this could probably help kind of explain a lot of what people go on about. Right, okay, so here is a perfect picture. Right, okay, let me screen share. I believe nope, it's that one. Sorry about this. Okay, so there is Travis Alabanza and Alok. So Travis is famous in the UK for having entered a women's changing room in a Topshop, and Travis went in there and said that they don't feel comfortable being in the men's changing room, and so they decided that well, they're more comfortable being in the women's. So
Okay.
yeah, so what I'm kind of trying to point out here is that I understand that you yourself have no kind of personal issue, but there are people out there who generally would do, because somebody who could kind of claim to be non-binary can then just use that fairly low entry point where, as I mentioned, if you're simply just kind of saying that you're non-binary, like I said, you can't just kind of get upset if they're not using the pronouns. But Travis got very upset when people told them that they couldn't use the female changing room because of that. And so as a result, Travis was actually made a complaint to Topshop, and then Topshop actually sided with them because their policy is to effectively allow anyone to kind of go into whatever room that they feel like. But that caused a lot of outrage, and especially with a lot of women's groups, because they felt that someone like Travis wasn't really, shouldn't really kind of be going into those kind of spaces anyway.
Okay. Yeah. So I think there are probably a few things here. I think the first thing to kind of get out the way is the fact that this kind of situation really isn't happening that much. These stories are catapulted into mainstream media because they're so like mental, right?
But
so,
just to kind of clarify on that bit, sorry, but they still happen. I understand that they're not like a hugely regular occurrence, but these kinds of things are still examples of things which can be going on. That's what I'm pointing out. It's just to kind of want to make sure that's not being forgotten about here.
Okay. I would say I'm not sure what pronouns to use. I'll just use that.
What pronouns like let's say you had just seen these people in the street. What pronouns would you use?
I mean, I don't automatically use they pronouns for anyone. So, but I think if you kind of, I don't use the male bathroom because in society for the most part I'm perceived as female. But I think if you're non-binary, you kind of, it sucks, and it definitely, dysphoria is a thing, and it kind of it definitely is. It's not great, but you do have to choose or which one you're going to go into based on what you pass as more. I mean, often I will go into the female changing rooms and people kind of look at me funny, or sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, wrong changing room." But for the most part, it's fine. When I was 16, it was different. I could not go into the female because I looked much more like a boy when I did when I was 16. I remember once I went into the female changing rooms. This was in America, and this lady was like, "Oh no, this is the woman's," and then took me and pointed me in the direction of like the male ones, and I was like, "What do I do?" But and you do have to use your kind of brain, I guess. You're going to use your brain.
Right. Okay. So I just kind of wanted to highlight Travis and pals, but just because that is an actual example from the real world, these things kind of do happen. But kind of moving on from that, I want to talk a bit more about your understanding of, because you said earlier that you are a trans non-binary person compared to a non-binary person. What to you is the difference between the two?
So I guess for me, I'm trans because I don't identify as male or female, and I'm transitioning, and I guess I'm going to get top surgery, and my experiences, I they're very similar to that of a binary trans person. Obviously they're different. I'm not saying they're not, but like, you know, I experienced dysphoria. I'm gonna get surgery. I feel like if I didn't identify as trans, what am I then? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you if you're not trans, then what are you?
Well, that was a pretty bad way of wording it. I guess, yeah, I'm trans because I'm transitioning.
You're trans because you are transitioning, and somebody who
I think.
isn't, you think, and somebody who is just non-binary, they're not transitioning.
I mean, it depends whether they're trans, non-binary or not.
Right.
Because I've known there's someone who I know, and she used to identify as non-binary. She was the one who actually kind of, I guess, made my brain start thinking about it like
Okay.
social and medical. Because she used to identify as non-binary, and she was talking to me about it, and she was like, yeah, it was a social thing. It was because I like, she'd been treated shittily by dudes before,
Right.
and identifying as non-binary was like a way of really taking back power. And yeah, so that's kind of how I see it. There are loads of reasons why you'd want to identify as non-binary, I guess. But if I don't understand that because I'm trans.
Right. But so tell me a bit about this friend of yours who kind of opened up your ideas to being non-binary. If you don't mind me asking, how long were they non-binary for, or she non-binary for, rather?
I don't know. I didn't really ask her. She was just like, I think she was just saying it's really interesting because she said, I'm the first like non-binary person she's met that's trans, I guess. But I mean, to be fair, I think she'd only met like one other non-binary person. But
right.
Yeah.
So she'd met one non-binary person. She'd kind of come out as being non-binary, and then you'd come out as being non-binary after meeting this person. So what was it about her that really opened your eyes?
Oh, she didn't open my eyes to being non-binary. Just opened my eyes to kind of, I guess, seeing it in this way, because before I'd been really confused as to kind of, I was like, some people are trans and some people are not, but like there's the same thing. And so I was very confused about what the distinction was, which is why I do think having a distinction would be helpful, because it would have helped me. I would have been like, oh, you can be trans and non-binary, and like you can transition, like you're allowed to do that. Because I didn't feel like I was allowed to go and get top surgery. You know, I was like, I didn't feel like I could do that.
So have you, what kind of medical pathway have you gone down so far? Like, you've seen I'm assuming you've seen a therapist about this?
Not yet, but
I'm
planning to. I've just moved,
right.
like a whole different island. I moved from the South Island to the North Island. I'm trying to kind of go through student health and talk to a doctor about it. I know in New Zealand, I think you can get it publicly and stuff like that.
But so how long are the waiting times?
I'm not sure. I think.
Have you inquired?
I've talked to. There's a trans woman in my hall, and she's on HRT and all this stuff. And so I was talking to her about it, and she was like, yeah, so I kind of went there, you know, in order to, I don't know, you have to have a gender dysphoria diagnosis, so, and then you have to
yeah, I'm assuming the pathway is very similar to what it is in the UK. But have you actually kind of you've not yet spoke to a medical professional about having gender dysphoria? You haven't had the chance. Okay.
But I really want to.
Right. Okay. So what is it you're hoping to get from a medical transition?
Not hating myself.
And not hating yourself. So what to you is, what's the end goal here? Like, what do you think would make you stop hating yourself? I'm sorry if that's a bit of a aggressive question.
I mean, surgery would definitely be a big thing. When I say hating myself, I mean it's more that my body doesn't kind of represent my brain, I guess. Like I look in the mirror, I'm like, I shouldn't look like this, you know. And I felt this since I was young. I remember when I was like 5 and we were learning about like puberty, but like in a really kind of dumbed down level because we're 5. They were talking about, you know, girls get, you know, tits, and I was like, but that's not going to happen to me. That's just not going to happen. I was so sure that was never going to happen. And then when I hit puberty and like it started happening, I was like, no, what's going on? It was awful. Yeah.
So what kind of surgeries are you hoping to get done?
Top surgery.
Just top surgery.
Yeah.
And so like you think that would be your biggest kind of part of your transition, right?
That definitely be the biggest thing. I mean, that's the thing I'm looking forward to the most. It's like I'll probably have to wait a few years from the sounds of it.
And so how long have you been wanting to get something like that done? Because that is a major step.
Quite a while. Like I said, even though I haven't been, I guess, identifying as non-binary for a while, that I've always sort of known that I wanted top surgery. Like I'd watch, that was one of the things that confused me, because I'd watch videos of like trans dudes getting top surgery and I'd just be like, I want that so much. But then I'd see testosterone and about half the changes I'd be like, yeah, but the other half I'd be like, nah. Yeah. Because obviously if you're non-binary, because T makes you look like a man, and obviously I don't want to look
not
like
always.
a man.
Not always.
Yeah.
I know someone who's taking testosterone shots right now and is basically just growing mutton chops, and that's literally it. There's going to be someone in the chat who will know exactly who I'm talking about, and so that's more of a shout out to them. But so you're not looking at taking any kind of hormones or anything. You're literally just looking at having top surgery, and then do you think that will be what would cure your dysphoria?
I mean, I'd probably still.
Well, I say cure, but as I used the wrong term there, because you never kind of outright cure dysphoria. But what you do is that you have the surgeries to manage them. And so do you think that would manage the way in which you are feeling?
I think it would manage. I mean, there's still there's other things that I would, you know, like to change, but they're not really possible. So I think this would cure a solid 80-90% of my I don't know why I'm using percentages, you never know. It would cure most of my dysphoria, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And so when you go to have your kind of medical appointment, what would you be expecting to happen? Would you just be expecting to go in to see someone and they would just be able to put you on a waiting list for a surgery? Or do you think that they would have a little bit more of a discussion on what your kind of background is and your reasoning for wanting to have the operation done?
I mean, they're definitely going to have a chat with me. That's what they do in New Zealand. I know from talking to people, like they talk to you about it. They have a discussion. I think, yeah, New Zealand is good in that sense. It's bad in the sense that there is absolutely no information online whatsoever. It's been really difficult to find anything. The only time I've actually managed to get proper information was when I was talking to someone who was trans and was going through it. Right.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the kind of the differentiation between the medical and the social, because I know we touched on it earlier. You mentioned about how, like, you know, you are a trans NB and then there's just a non-binary. So you're someone who wants to go down like a medical pathway. How would you feel about non-binary people who will effectively say that they are the same as you, but they don't do anything at all?
I mean, do you mean people who say that they're trans and non-binary but don't transition?
Well, they generally lump the two together. Like, I'll be completely honest, you're one of the first people I've ever met who says that they are trans and non-binary. Like the vast
Yeah.
majority of non-binary people I know will just they'll just say that they are non-binary, and then they are also then kind of lumped in with with the kind of definition of being trans regardless. Like there isn't really a lot of a differentiation between like being a trans non-binary person and a non-binary person. And so yeah, and a lot of the community acts like these are all like, I mean, there's enough of a problem within the kind of the binary trans community, as you might call it. But the majority of the non-binaries that I've come across, these are people who just say they're non-binary and that's it, regardless of whether or not they do anything, whether or not they even change their hair or their clothes, they still put themselves within the trans community. And so what you end up with is one huge blob of people that have literally nothing to do with one another. And so do you feel like there's a particular thing there with this definition?
Sort of. I think there's a few things. One is I like I said, I don't care what people want to identify as. That's fine. I just think there definitely needs to be more, maybe more separation, and not in a bad way, not in like, oh, these people are less than me, they're not as good as me because I'm actually trans. It's not like that at all. It's more like, we're different. This is going to help people like me understand what's going on. And because if there had been that distinction, I wouldn't have been so confused. I wouldn't have spent so long being like, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel like this,
Right. Okay, well, let's talk a bit more about kind of the non-binary community as a whole. Now, how many non-binary people do you know?
I like in real life, I don't even have one person that springs to mind. Like, I can't think of a single person.
So you don't actually know any non-binary people?
No, well, not in my life at the moment. There might have been a couple of people in school, but no, not really. No.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty. I actually kind of, makes it quite isolating in my experience. Not in like I'm by myself all the time. It's just I don't know anyone in real life who shares my experience. I only know one other trans person really, so it's quite. Yeah, it's like.
So really, it sounds like a lot like your kind of non-binary experience came from high school.
Sort of, but I only really started kind of. I don't know. Even in high school, that you don't kind of talk about it that much. Like, it wasn't a thing. Yeah, I guess.
Right. Okay, and so you don't speak to kind of non-binary people online or anything like that? You're kind of isolated in being NB.
I guess so. I mean, I would like to talk to people. I've had a few conversations. Somebody kind of reached out to me on Instagram, which was really nice. They were like, "Hey, I saw your videos. I feel the same way as you do." Turns out she lives in the same town as me and goes to like the university that I used to be at. And I was like, that's mental. So yeah, but I mean, there just aren't that many. There aren't that many non-binary people, right? So it's like.
I mean, it's one of these things where my experience of non-binary people is, statistically, I can always kind of get behind the idea, right, that you have things such as trans men and trans women. Trans men and trans women are incredibly rare in general society, or at least they should be until the definition was widely expanded. I've always felt that taking that kind of idea that you could have men who identify more as males who identify as females and females who identify as males, there would be people who wouldn't identify as either. However, I would say that is such a smaller percentage of either trans men or trans women that is something that is almost being, it's incredibly minuscule within a community that is already minuscule. But I would say in my experiences certainly in London, is that the vast majority of people I know who are under the trans umbrella are non-binaries. And these are people who predominantly come from left-wing groups, these are people who come from the more kind of artsy areas, kind of the same kind of similar kind of backgrounds to what you've said, that, with your arts and kind of performance and all of that. Like a lot of the non-binary people I know have that kind of background. The queer community, as I'm sure you're aware, is incredibly left-wing, to the point where I have never met a non-binary person who was a centrist, let alone right-wing.
There is one person that comes to mind. He's quite popular online. I think somebody said he might have even been on Crowder or something. I'm not sure if he has. His name's like Felix something Green, or I don't know. But
Felix Green.
I don't know. I might be getting the name wrong. I can send you a link afterwards, if you want. But there are definitely some.
So who is this person then? Because I've not heard of anyone like this.
I don't really know. I just somebody kind of sent me a link because I said I was talking about I was talking about this with them, and they were like, oh yeah, what about this guy? And then they sent me a link, and he's a relatively big figure or something, and I was like, oh cool. Well, I mean, obviously he supports Trump, and I hate Trump, so maybe not that cool. But
well, I might be wearing a MAGA hat right now, for all you know.
What was I going to say?
You think I'm joking? I literally have several MAGA hats in my flat. Anyway,
you do you, right? No, I think it's funny because in New Zealand, everybody hates Trump, even if you're conservative. I mean, not everybody, but I'd say a solid 90% of the population hates Trump, even if they're right-wing. They hate Trump.
Yeah.
But what was I saying? Oh yeah, I know. I knew someone who was non-binary but conservative, but they were economically conservative, so I'm not sure whether you'd count that. But I feel like your politics isn't really indicative of your identity, so I don't know.
Well, my point on this is that when you look at, in particular, this social side and the social transition people, if we talk about that for a second, like, I've never seen anyone on the right who does that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so, but I mean, if you're on the right, you'd have a different, I guess, philosophy of what gender is. So it sort of makes sense, and also the right, for the most part, isn't. It's not really that accepting of non-binary people. If I was to go into a right-wing space and be like, yo guys, I'm non-binary, do you think they're going to be like, oh no, we welcome you? Or do you think they're going to be like, lol, that's not real, go kill yourself?
Well, just for clarity, for years I thought that right-wing spaces would be completely unwelcoming for me as a trans woman. I mean, that had been almost drilled into me. It's so blatant from everywhere that you kind of look within like queer spaces or even like the LGBT press. They make it very clear that conservatism or libertarianism or any kind of ideology on the right is not accepting. I faced a lot more like ridicule, like attacks from the left than I ever have from the right. The right I found to be incredibly open and accepting of who I am. Like, I have a lot of friends who, are prominent right-wingers, and all of them have been incredibly respectful of me. So I would never say that like on the right, they would never accept you, because for all you know, they well could. A lot of the right seem to be much more interested in what somebody is actually thinking, what their beliefs and ideologies are, rather than what it is that they are. So, for example, the right isn't necessarily bothered about someone being gay or lesbian, but they're more bothered about kind of what that person's own beliefs are. Yeah,
I think that's probably, that might be one of the reasons I'd say you were more accepted, because on the right, because you agree with their ideas. So,
well, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's it. That's literally it. Like the right respects ideology. The left respects your identity.
See, I disagree with that because I mean, also the right respects opinions and stuff, but so does the left. But on the right, I mean, it's such a generalization. But non-binary people, they're seen as an ideology. I guess that's the thing. We're seen as an ideology. So as soon as I even like put my little finger into a right wing kind of space to kind of say my opinion, people just instantly are like, you're mentally ill. I've had people just be like, you're not really trans because you haven't transitioned yet. Like, you're just faking it for attention and just everything. And I like to think I'm a pretty respectful person and I'm pretty chill, but no matter how chill I am, people just they see it as an ideology.
I mean, it's not a lot to do with not being non-binary, born out of an ideology, though.
I mean, I guess if you're gonna think about, I guess everything we do is probably born out of an ideology to some extent. It's our biology interacting with our environment. So
I mean, I wouldn't say that me identifying as being trans, whilst there is, like, in particular on the gender critical side, they talk about trans ideology as though it's this all-encompassing thing that all trans people inherently believe, and it's not really the case. I understand what they mean by trans ideology, but it's not quite ideology that has made us become who we are. And so I would say that a trans person would end up being trans even if they are conservative. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely because our identity doesn't really have any. Well, it shouldn't. I mean, I guess that everything comes into play, but for the most part, our identity and our beliefs are separate. They overlap, but they're not connected. Like, they're not fused together, right?
Right. So you would agree that your ideology or whatever is not connected to like who you are as a person.
I mean, well, I guess everything's connected, but it's I'm not non-binary because of my ideology, I guess is
Right.
what I'm trying to say. I think I'm not non-binary because I'm left wing, right?
Right.
I'm non-binary because I just am.
Right. But at the same time, a lot of the kind of beliefs that you are incredibly common within the non-binary community.
Yeah, I think the thing is that was one of the things that why it took me so long to accept that I was non-binary, because
Did you feel like you were falling into tropes?
In what sense? What kind of tropes?
So I know when I mentioned about, so forgive me if I heard this wrong. You mentioned about like when I mentioned about like having like the kind of the left-wing beliefs which are incredibly common within non-binary spaces, and you then said something about you didn't want to feel like you were kind of falling in within non-binary. So I just wanted to clarify if I kind of connected the two right there. That's all.
I guess I didn't. I don't know. I think for just so long I didn't see non-binary as a thing, and it was only when I accepted non-binary as being a thing,
right,
that I could accept myself, because you can't accept yourself if you don't believe what you are is a thing,
right.
And that's why I'm left. That's probably why I believe in the left-wing stuff, because in right-wing spaces there just isn't, non-binary doesn't really have a place. Like with binary trans people, there's far more research done on this, so you can justify your identity in a medical sense far easier than I can, and
because there isn't the same kind of there isn't really the medical kind of background for MBs.
Yeah,
is that it?
Yeah, there hasn't been as much research. I mean, there is some stuff, but there isn't nearly as much. And so being in a space where no one accepts you is horrible. Why would I want to be there?
Right. Okay. I mean, well, let's talk. Oh, I mean, we said that we were going to go for about an hour, and so it's almost at the hour's point. So it's up to you at this point. Do you want to continue the conversation, or do you want to start wrapping it up?
I have all the time in the world, so I don't mind. Well, not
Okay.
all the time in the world, but you know what I mean.
Okay, so let's just go for a little bit longer then, and just quickly touch on the kind of the more medical side. Where you mentioned about that there isn't really been a lot of medical looking for being non-binary, right? And so when you came out as non-binary, what were the things that you were actually looking at that made you realize that you were non-binary? What was the thing that was it having a look at, like, say for example, realizing that gender dysphoria, you think realizing that gender dysphoria could mean that you are non-binary, or was this reading opinion pieces, or what was it exactly?
So I think at this point I was pretty sure that I had gender dysphoria, because I was like, look, everything that all my experiences just fit that criteria, right? You know, I was like, if I don't, it was kind of obvious that I did, right? But I still, I guess I've been interested in philosophy since I was about 14, 13. Used to watch a lot of kind of atheist stuff. I was one of those people, you know.
Everyone was one of those people. I think
Yeah.
that's how most of us kind of started to get into YouTube in the first place. It was a cringy time.
Yeah, no, I used to watch a lot of kind of that stuff. So I was big into philosophy, and I guess the way I kind of came around to understanding that was through reasoning and logic, I guess. Just through reasoning and logic, less through not through opinion pieces, although seeing non-binary people get top surgery, that was a big thing that really helped. I was like, oh, okay, these people are doing it, that this is cool, I can do this. So I guess it was a mixture of those two.
Okay, cool. So I want to kind of read out some super chats, and then afterwards we can talk about if there's anything else that you might like to kind of bring up, if that's all right. Okay, so let's go through some of the super chats. So I need to. There we go. Right, let me open up this window more. There we go. So Danny Rendon with the $5, supporting the channel. No need to interrupt the convo to read. Love you. Well, thanks. The Bloody Heartland with the $5. The problem is NB is that there's no set definition of the term. If you got 10 NBs in a room and asked, you'd get 10 different answers. What do you think about that?
I think. I mean, I think my thing is, if you do that with binary trans people, you get different answers too. So, I mean, maybe it probably does happen more with non-binary people, because there's less knowledge about us. So we have to form our own, I guess, frameworks for what it means.
Right.
If there was more info, if there was more information out there, I don't think there would be this huge disconnect, right?
Right. So what you say at the moment, because there's not a lot known about non-binary people, that you're going to always get all these different kinds of definitions. And it's like, until there is more research into what this is, it's going to be something which is incredibly hard to pin down. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the knowledge, I mean, obviously we have knowledge, but if you compare it to, just binary trans people, there's hardly anything, right?
Right. Okay. Mars with the $10. The issue is the meaning differs based on who you talk to. NBs tend to want to speak for or police binary trans, and there isn't any science behind NB. That's why people have a hard time with it. No hate. What do you think of that?
I think obviously I haven't been in a lot of these. Everyone always talks about how non-binary people are trying to talk over binary trans people, but I haven't been in any spaces where I've seen that. So I guess I don't understand it from that perspective, but I can say I'm not trying to speak over anyone.
You are
I
aware that that does
recognise-
happen, though, right?
Of course. I mean, I always say there are assholes in every group, right? But yeah, no, I'm not trying to speak over, binary trans people. I recognize our experiences are different. You know, you can be different, but also similar, you know?
Right. Okay. Proper horror show with the £2. Good on Mo and Rose. Also, y'all want some Homestuck. So do you like Homestuck?
Well, I don't know what that is.
I think it's Homestuck or something. I think that's what she means.
Oh,
Where the hell is Homestuck? Oh,
I
Homestuck. Yes. Do you have you not heard of Homestuck?
no.
Okay. I just Googled it because I forgot what it means. And now I've realized what it means. Like, you are one of the very few non-binary people I've ever talked to who doesn't know what Homestuck is.
Really? What
I mean,
does it mean?
Okay, I genuinely don't know a lot about it, but I know a lot of non-binary people who are very, very much into it. Let's just share screen, Chrome tab. Yeah. So here's some Homestuck. Homestuck is a webcomic, and it has people with glasses in it. It has a guy with a katana. I know a non-binary person who spends all their time dressing up as that character.
I think I'm a pretty, I don't know, I'm quite chill, and I don't really follow a lot of the internet trends, I guess. Like I don't know. I think I literally I can't even dress up. Like if I dress up, I feel so shit about myself. So that's probably why I don't know.
No, that's fine. Like I said, there's very few non-binary people I've ever met who don't know what that is. So thanks. And finally, Moy Felicita. Oh wait, there's another one's popped in as well. Moy Felicita, the DKK20. Good chat. Well done, both of you. Oh, thanks for that, Moy. Glad you enjoyed it. SEZ with the $5. NB transsexual here, on hormones, libertarian, work in math and data, sci, not art. Would love to chat, Rose. Totally agree about trans spaces going awry. Okay, I've had like a few like different non-binary people like want to talk to me, and like Mo is the first, so maybe this could be its own series. Rose talks to the NBs about stuff. I don't know. But anyway, so Mo, is there anything else that you would like to talk about?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
Unless you have anything else you want to bring up, I think yeah.
Okay. So in that case, I think it's a good time to kind of wrap this up. So Mo, thank you so much for coming on the channel and agreeing to have this conversation. Do you want to do any kind of shout outs, any kind of promotion for your stuff?
Hell yeah. So I've got a channel. It's Cops Hate Mo. And that's just all my other social media too. But yeah, if you want to check that out, you can. I do like videos on trans stuff, but also music, because I love music. But yeah.
Okay, also I'll put a link into Mo's channel afterwards when I edit it, so go check out the stuff. So with that, I will wrap this up, but just before I do so, just a few more kind of channel related announcements. First of all, I want to apologize for the lack of videos over the last 2 weeks. I've had a lot kind of going on, so it's been difficult, but I know I keep on saying more videos are coming. They are. I've got a really good video on Stonewall coming out in the next couple of days. And there's more things. Also, I am going to be launching a new live stream series very soon. And the working title of it is Seal of Approval. And it does kind of feature seals in one way or another. I've got some seal art drawn up already. So far, we've got Ariel Scarcella and Blair White as seals. So you got that to look forward to. Scrump will be co-hosting it with me as well. There's one more super chat to come in. Martinique Junebug. Hey, you guys are awesome. I'm NB myself and watch Rosa Dawn, so this was great to see. Someone understanding NB dysphoria is great. I'm glad that you've enjoyed the stream. Like, this was always intended to like kind of be respectful and just kind of understanding a bit more about kind of where non-binary people are coming from. There are things that I do disagree with about it, but I think that we're understanding a little bit more about the kind of the mindset of it all. And Mo, thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
okay.
That's okay.
So with that, I will end the stream now, and I will put out a new video in the next couple of days, and I'll see you all next time.